Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. Now, this is a video, I hope, which will be taken with a bit of patience. I want some understanding with this video because it's one of those things that is definitely only geared towards a certain group of people, but also is hopefully an introduction to what that means for the wider community when it comes to playing Age of Sigmar and playing games. I'm not going to beat around the bush. What I'm going to be talking about is the UK Age of Sigmar Masters. And I'm going to kind of talk about Masters, competitive gaming, tournament gaming, and everything that's leading up to what I'm proposing and what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's talk about just generally playing Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar is a game you can just play with your friends in a club, at your house, or any of those things. And one of the things that's brilliant about this as a game system is... One of the brilliant things about this as a game system is that that's it. That's all it ever has to be. It's just a very complex board game, right? But the thing about the complex board game that is Age of Sigmar, 40k, whatever, that's cool. That's all it ever has to be. And I think sometimes the online conversation and the conversations that happen in hobby stores about people then playing at events and playing in like a tournament setting is then sometimes definitely perceived as being bad. It's definitely seen as scary, right? It's one of the things that got brought up in the chat earlier. Someone was like, I'm a little bit intimidated by like tournament and competitive gaming. And I super agree because loads of people, and I also have had those feelings myself in the past. When I first started going to events, I was quite intimidated, right? However, you know, eventually it's just one of those things. You're scared of it and then you go do it. That's something important that we all need to remember in our lives. Anyway, so that's definitely something people feel, and they're also told that competitive people are terrible and all these other things. That's just not true. It's really just not true. A good example would be the video that Rogue Hobbies made, where she came with me last year to the Age of Sigmar World Championships, and she showed that everyone was absolutely lovely, okay? Which is an important thing for people, and people watched that, and I think it changed a lot of people's minds. All right, so... what do events normally look like? This is all leading up to me talking about running a specific event here in the UK, but I'm hopefully taking a lot of people who are like, actually, I just watch your videos because I just bought some Iron Jaws, or I don't really know much about how things work. And you're like, that makes a lot of sense, okay? So that's what I'm trying to build up towards. I'm trying to build up towards explaining everything. And if you already know, then I apologize, but I'm trying to build all of this up. Okay, so... normally tournaments either take part as oh my god, I'm so sorry. They either are a one-day thing or they're a two-day thing. Sometimes you get these crazy 3-day things. Sometimes you get like 12 rounds and you get like shadow rounds and a bunch of other stuff. We're going to put those to the side. Normally at local stores, there's one-day events that normally take about 3 rounds because a game of Warhammer takes normally about 3 hours. So 3 hours, 3 rounds, 9 hours in a day. That's you done for the day, right? And that's how most people normally start playing Age of Sigmar. Or, sorry, well, most people start playing competitive wargaming, is they do a one-dayer, as they're called. Also, one-dayers are really easy for people who are busy, they've got families, they've got a job, they want to do something else on the Sunday, whatever it might be. So there's loads of things that people want to do with their time. It's not necessarily spending 2 days playing. Also, you know, there's financial stuff like if you do a 2-day, you have to stay overnight and stuff. But a 2-dayer is seen as, I don't want to say a more legitimate kind of tournament, but when we track stats, we only track 2-day stats. That's generally because one-dayers aren't, the way it works is, normally the first couple of games that you play are random because when you get paired into each other the first round, anyone could play anyone, which means you could get the best player in the pack or the most successful player in the pack playing someone who's their first ever event. And obviously you get a massive disparity in skill there. That could also happen for the next 2 games, really. So you could just end up with someone winning the event. Not that I think winning one day really matters. Like you get someone winning the event and they really haven't started to play against people of equal skill. Now, people always suggest things like, let's do an ELO system. You don't, which is a kind of bracketed system that they use in chess for like working out your rankings and your skill level. It's not going to really work ever in Age of Sigmar or any of the game systems because people don't play enough games because they take 3 hours as an example. Or they don't play all week and it's not really professional, but put that conversation to the side for the other day. 2 days are the things that I think you end up getting a more relevant sort of competition, rounds 4 and round 5. So kind of the Sunday games generally tend to be a little bit tougher at the topper end, which is why I think that's a good way of you initially, if you're new to playing competitive gaming, you can immediately be like, cool, I need to play an event. I should go look for a 1-dayer, but you can still go to a 2-dayer. I think that's a really important thing to say. You can still go to a 2-day event and go play some games. You absolutely can, and you absolutely should. If the only available tournament near you, close to when you want to go, is a 2-dayer, just go. You'll have a great time. But so we only take the stats from a 2-day event. And the reason we do that is because I think that they're more relevant. They make more sense. And not the accolades, but the information and data that's drawn from them, to me, my personal experience, having been doing this for like a decade, has seen this time and again. I've run dozens of events, maybe into the like dozens and dozens, maybe up to the hundreds now. But I've run a lot of events, right? So I've seen this multiple times. I've also been to like the highest level of like competitive play. I've been to the Las Vegas Open. I've been to multiple international international events. So, and it's not to say like I know everything, because I don't know everything. I'm just trying to say that I've seen a lot, and in my opinion, not fact, my opinion, those are the most relevant ones. So you take the data from the 2-day events. Well, I don't actually. A good, amazing human being called Rob does, and he puts that together. And that's how we also get our stats, where we're like, ogres aren't doing very well, or fire slayers for some reason are super strong at the moment, which is how they end up. And when you've taken all that data together, you do end up with being able to take a ton of information from this, and you start to be able to give people points for the wins that they get, and then you develop something called rankings. Now, this obviously isn't too complex a thing. I'm sure you've seen this in other walks of life, but it's something that we do. And we've kind of, if I'm just, hand on my heart and like being real honest about it, we were doing it a lot, and then we fell off a little bit, but we're back, and we're trying to do it much more seriously and be like better about it. And today's video and explaining everything about like tournament gaming is basically trying to like, put our flag back in the ground and say, look, we're trying really hard to make this thing happen. So yeah, you end up with rankings points. So the way we do it is you get 20 points if you win a game. So like you go to a 5-round event, you get 100 points. And then if based on the size of the event, because based on the size of the event, so if it's 50 people or more, you also get another 10 points. And then it brackets down. If it's something like 32 or less, then you only get 8 points for a win. So if you win the largest event possible, then you end up with 30. You win a game at the largest event possible, you end up with 30, like you would at something like the Las Vegas Open that just happened, or CanCon that's just about to happen. But if you just went to a little GT, you would only end up with like 20 points for a win and 4 points. That's how we do the system. Now, why do we differentiate between them? It's a great question, actually. We talked about this loads, and actually, there's a bunch of different reasons. Number one, there's some sort of perceived value in playing in a larger event. Generally, if you play in a larger event, you might end up playing more of the more practiced and seasoned people, because they generally tend to coalesce together because sometimes there's bigger prizes or sometimes there's more accolade for winning the event. And therefore, generally the games are perceived to be as harder, but that's actually not true. Sometimes you can just have small GTs that have got like multiple international players and it's just an incredibly hard run anyway. So it's really hard to judge, and maybe it's something we're going to do away with in the future. I'm not really sure at the moment, because I think it's absolutely worth talking about. What it definitely does do is it stops Jimmy attending his local event that's only ever got like, 6 chill guys and girls and MBs who just want to hang out, and then ruffle stomping them every weekend and just being apparently the champion of the world. It kind of stops that as well, right? You have to you have to travel a bit, and you have to do a bunch of other stuff. But one of the things that we did do over the past several years is we reduced the number that you needed, as in the size of the event, for how many points you needed to get. One of the reasons that we did that, that I think is super, super important for you to remember, is because way back in the day, the Las Vegas Open and what Games Workshop eventually bought, the ITC, was effectively a scheme or a scam. Scam's the wrong word, but I'm trying to explain, where the larger the event, the more points you would get. You would get points for the win, but more points in addition. Therefore, you would keep going to the largest events, like the Las Vegas Open. You would get more points for the larger event, and so those events started selling tickets. And would you believe it, the people that ran the ITC were also people who ran events, unsurprisingly. So they were connected to each other. So when we eventually decided to change our system for how many points we gave out for the size of the event, we reduced the numbers down because, in my opinion, a 24-person event or like a 16-person event anywhere in the world is pretty much valid. Norway is a really great example of this, actually. Norway's got an incredible group of gamers. Norway and Sweden. Denmark. I mean, Denmark's an incredibly small nation with really small events. Like, they cap out around 40. They're not much bigger than that most of the time. They're currently back-to-back international world champions, as an example. Norway, incredible player base, really solid. And again, a smaller community. And whenever they travel internationally, they normally kick people's ass. So the size of the community or even the size of the events doesn't necessarily denote the skill level of people either. So just wanted to point that out, say that this is what we currently do, but actually maybe there's some problems with it. Okay, so if you've been watching any of my videos, you'll have seen that we do the rankings. So we do the rankings, and you can check by the nation as well. So what we're going to do here at the TSN from the Honest Wargamer is we're going to run something called the Age of Sigmar UK Masters. And what we're going to do is we're going to invite the top 24 performing people from the rankings to be able to get a ticket and then play and compete to be the champion. Now, let's talk about Masters. I'm going to talk about who's in this like selection so far. The cutoff will be 1 month before the Masters. So the month before the Masters, we'll keep tracking games the month before the Masters, and we'll talk about it. Let's talk about the Masters formats for wargaming. So this is actually something that happens in lots of different countries. Some people, we have had a Masters in the UK before. It's kind of fallen apart. So I'm just trying to resurrect it. I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes. If anyone's super offended and super upset by this, then you let me know. But I'm lucky. I've worked really hard in my life to be able to build the infrastructure to be able to just host a Masters at my own venue with terrain that I've painted on tables that I've built and chairs that I've bought. So with my work, so I'm lucky that I'm in there, but I also have worked to like be able to do that, right? Anyway, so Masters are like kind of seen as the benchmark for the tournament players. I guess it's like Golden Demon. I think this is the thing. I've started out by explaining everything to everybody, and everyone kind of already knows. Like you maybe know how tournaments work, maybe you don't. But it's also important to remember that I started this video by saying it's just cool to just play games in your garage, in your house, at your local game store with your friends, and none of this matters to you. But it does matter to a huge bunch of people. The same way Golden Demon matters to a whole bunch of people. I've never heard in my life someone say, that Golden Demon guy tried too hard. I have heard them say, don't use AI, which you shouldn't use AI. You shouldn't be a stupid idiot and use AI. But I haven't heard someone say, you haven't, you've tried too hard. And with gaming, people sometimes say you've tried too hard, and that seems a little bit silly. Like, because your local gaming store or your local events or whatever are happening exist because people go to events and play a lot. That's an important thing to remember. If you only play an event once a year or you never play, you aren't ever supporting that economy to exist. These people play a lot. Playing games is important to them. How they do it events is important to them. The same way it is to Golden Demon and painters. These are important things for people. So I don't want to see anyone say in the comments, oh, I don't know why people would want to win at a game. Because that's silly. People like being good at something, and being able to test yourself is what this is. So lots of countries run a Masters system, right? That's an important thing to remember. Lots of people run a master system, but not every country runs a master system, and they all do it in different ways. Sometimes it's by body, sometimes by whatever it might be. And that normally coincides with the General's Handbook. Now, that's an important thing to remember for Age of Sigmar specifically when we start talking about that. Age of Sigmar had a 6-month system for the GHB previously, which made it super weird because you were like, are you going to run a master system every 6 months? Are you going to run a master system like at the end of the 12-month cycle, but it's got 2 different GHBs? Thankfully, we've gone back to there only being one General's Handbook or one kind of season, I think is the best way to describe it. If you are coming from like competitive computer games, and you know, there's a generation of people now, like a huge generation of people that come from like League of Legends and a bunch of other like competitive online stuff where you really understand this. This is really not very complicated. But for a bunch of other people, they're like, I've never been involved in this. I don't really know. So there's a season and it runs from the beginning of the game or the beginning of the GHB to the next GHB. So hopefully I've timed this because I've timed it around. So this is June the 14th and June the 15th. Hopefully that will give us the end of the Masters season. And then people will be able to come and say, I was the best in the country at that particular General's Handbook, which is, I think, a fun thing to do. Whereas previously people would you would have the General's Handbook come out before, and then people would be competing in the new game, but based on the old setup, which I think is imagine running who's the best at the old season, but using all the new season's rules. That would be a super weird thing to do. So I've tried to time it so that it's right. So I might move the date around every year, but that's what we're going to do. Right now, let's go look at who's currently, and let's go look at the actual rankings. So you can see on the rankings here, number 1 in the country right now is Hazel Moon. So she's got 696 points. Now, one of the things you will notice, Damien and Natty's only 14, as an example, they've attended more events than Max and Joe Jackson and Matt Gouldsborough, as an example. So you're oh, well, they've attended more, they've got more results. This is it. They've got more results, therefore their score is higher. I'm going to say this again. I'm going to say it really, really clearly. You cannot attend 3 events in a year and think you're the best player in the world. You have to you have to prove yourself multiple times, but you also have to support the event community. I don't believe, and I think it's really important to say, that you attend an event a year and you're I should be able to be invited to that. You sound like a moron. That would be an incredibly stupid thing to say. You need to turn up and you need to be an active member of the community. All of these people that we're talking about, Hazel, Phil, Dom, Matt, Joe Jackson, Max Barton, Damien and Natty, Mike, Orpheus. Orpheus is also 14. I'd like to just shout out that there are 2 14-year-olds in the top 10 in the United Kingdom. We've got a good generation in the future. Those people turn up to events and they play at events. Therefore, you should be eligible to represent. And it's a year, right? So we take your top 6 events. That would mean that you have to play in 1 event every 2 months. It doesn't seem that's definitely a lot. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely a lot to do. But if your life or being the master of a game system means that you can't give up more than 1 weekend every 2 months, and I think that there's a real good conversation as to how important is that master system to you, and also how important generally should the accolade of being a master be, as an example. Okay. And also I'd like to take a moment to point out that also there is an incredible bias that's available here. The richer you are, the more you can play. Okay. The more armies you can buy, the more stuff you can do. That's so true. You're absolutely correct on that front. Before anyone leaves a comment, that's a fact. It's a fact of life. Okay. It's true for every sport that's available. Okay. Anyway. And it sucks, and we should get universal coverage. But anyway, we'll talk about that in the future. So we can see Josh Bunning, Richie McCallie, Paul Duduka, Phil Marshall, Benjamin Sava, Kieran Alinda, Peter Twig, Colin Cochrane, Daniel Bean, Peter Dixon, and then Romain Outers, Alistair Maxwell, Seb Ducker, and Abaid bin Nasir are all currently in the top 24 for the United Kingdom. All in the top 24, so they'll all be invited. Now, you might be asking yourself, Rob, should you do an international one? I don't want to do an international one for a ton of different reasons. I have done one in the past, and it was wicked, and I really enjoyed seeing all the people. But I don't want to ask a ton of people to travel from all over the world just because of something I think is cool and I would like to do. I'd like to provide a service for my local community, and thanks to Rob with the stats, if you were in, let's say, Australia, and you wanted to look at this information and you wanted to use our system, then you could go find out who the top 24 in Australia, like Pat Nevin, Mitch Bugg, Nigel Weir, and you could run your own masters, which is cool as well. So there's loads of opportunities for people to do some cool stuff with the rankings that we're doing, and we're just trying to do our part. Let's also talk about, lastly, what I would like to see. What I like seeing is a thriving community. And I think as Age of Sigmar 4, maybe the list writing maybe doesn't seem quite as jazzy as Age of Sigmar 3. And maybe some of the other elements, like copy and pasted books at the moment, can make people feel a little bit down. I think everyone's really excited about Sun Goblins. Everyone's really excited about new Soblek Gravelords. Everyone's really excited about potentially Chaos Dwarfs coming up. These are all really, really exciting things. But I think people need something to get them up, get them out, get them motivated, get them go playing games. And becoming maybe the UK Master, or saying you were third in the country during 2025. It's a cool thing to say, and that's why we're doing it. And I hope you can see now. And I would love to know your comments in the comments below. Twitch chat have said what they've had to say. I'd love to know what you think about this and what you didn't know, and if you'd like to take part. Also, if you're based in the UK, I should also say and shout this out, if you'd like to, we do run events at the TSN here in England, so the TSN Arena in Nottingham. I do an Age of Sigmar event at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. But to be really clear and balanced, so it's not just me banging on about my events, which are the best, by the way, then you can go to a website, which I'll link, called The Dank Hold, run by a super cute guy, and he posts all of the available Age of Sigmar events for you to go to through the year on there as well. So if you want to go check them out, you can, and you can go to any events. You don't have to come to mine. You might be like, I can't stand that guy, which is cool. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. I'll see you soon.